Good morning and welcome to All People's Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Michael Zepeda, and I'm here to help lead worship with our guest preacher, Kendra Weddle, who returns again to our pulpit. We are happy to see all of you this morning. Our Sunday service is a shared time of worship for all present as we gather for music, spoken words, a time of reflection and inspiration as a religious community. Let us come together in a spirit of compassion and respect for ourselves and others attending this service. We especially welcome those who are visiting today. If you haven't yet done so, please sign in at the visitors table by the front door, where you can be placed on our mailing list to receive our weekly emails and the monthly newsletter. Before we continue on with worship, there are some announcements to be had. After service today and the coffee hour, please join the Faith Forward Inquirers service following the church. This is for visitors and members alike, and we hope to see you there. Next Sunday morning, prior to services during Adult Forum, please join Tina Harmuth as they do their next installment on UU Ethics, which sounds interesting. We also have a couple of announcements from Social Action. Many of you may have noticed the paper goods necessities cart out in the hallway. That is a take as you need, contribute what you can situation, just to help people get through these difficult times. And also, there are a couple of lobbying days coming up in Austin. March the 13th is the Texas UU Justice Ministry maternal mortality issue. On March the 20th, it is a march for LGBTQ plus equality. And on March the 28th, it's a call for racial justice and LGBTQ issues. Sarah, our DRE, can help you with more information if you have that. Another big news, the work on our new sign has gone into production at the Signs Manufacturing Company in Dallas. So we are remodeling the existing monument sign out in front of the church on Sandy Lane with our new name, All People's Church Unitarian Universalist. And please extend your thanks to the Name Change Committee, and a big thanks to Carl Thibodeau, the church administrator, who has designed the art and the graphics, as well as shepherding and negotiating the cost of getting the job done. So we will keep you posted as to installation, hopefully in the not too distant future. And our final announcement is a brief introduction of Kendra. Kendra Weddle, PhD, is currently serving as a scholar in residence at North Haven Church in Dallas, Texas. Prior to this position, she was professor of religious studies for over 10 years at Texas Wesleyan University. And before that, she was an associate professor of religious studies at George Fox University in Newberg, Oregon. She is especially interested in the intersections of faith and feminism and is working for justice as faith in action. Kendra lives in Irving with her husband, Brian, and their chocolate Labrador retriever, Rue. So welcome back, Kendra. And now please settle comfortably for our musical prelude.
Good morning. Our call to worship this morning comes from Jane Goodall. Seen as the world's foremost expert on chimpanzees since she first went to work in Tanzania in 1960, where she witnessed human-like behaviors amongst chimpanzees, she has wisdom to share. So here's what she says to us this morning. You cannot get through a single day without having an impact on the world around you. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference that is.
To stand in body or spirit for the lighting of our chalice. For the gift of this day and for this community of spiritual nurture, compassion, we give thanks. We light this chalice as a token, symbol of our faith. May our many sparks meet and merge in communion of heart and soul. Please remain standing for our opening hymn and the affirmation which follows. The opening hymn is number 112, Do You Hear, in the gray hymnal. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another.
You may be seated, but if there are people here who would like to join me in the story for all ages, I invite you to come now. Hi again. Thank you for joining me. Yeah, come on up. Oh, that's great. Nice to see you all this morning. So I've been thinking a little bit about what I pay attention to. And I kind of wondered what you all pay attention to. What are the things that kind of grab your attention? Anything. All right.
Interesting.
I think that's a really good insight, right? The things that we find interesting will hold our attention, right? Anything else?
Things that make us angry.
Oh, okay. Things that make us angry, that gets our attention as well.
Something that does not get our attention is something that we aren't comfortable with doing.
There you go. Something that kind of makes us uncomfortable, we might not pay so much attention to. Yeah, that's right. So I brought something to share with you because this is something that some people use to help them pay attention, and I thought you might be interested in seeing one. Do you want to take one? Would you like to take that one? I know. These are called Tibetan singing bowls, and people use them to help pay attention. So I thought you might be interested in just seeing what they sound like. They make kind of interesting sounds, don't they? And you know it might change depending on how you hold it. So you might try different ways, right? See? It changed a little bit, didn't it? Do you think that using one of these might hold your attention for a while?
Somewhat.
Yeah, it's kind of good, isn't it?
Not completely. I've never completely an intention to anything.
Well, I completely understand that.
It's called engaged.
Right. Well, thank you for coming up and spending some time with me. And as you go throughout your week, this coming week, I might encourage you to think about, what do I pay attention to?
That's how that sound goes.
Right, it's see? Oh, you're a natural. Yeah, thank you for coming up this morning. And so now we will sing them out together. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Be an offering to sustain and strengthen this place, which is sacred to so many of us, a community of memory and of hope, for we are now the keepers of the dream. We share our undesignated cash offerings in the collection plate with a charitable group in the community. Our Share the Plate recipient for this month is the Center for Transforming Lives, who are affiliated with the YWCA. They are an organization that works side by side with women and their children to disrupt the cycle of poverty throughout Tarrant County. The offering will now be received. Will the ushers please come forward?
That was so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Our reading today comes from the most well-known portion of the Mahabharata called the Bhagavad Gita. The Gita is especially important for understanding what is often called devotional Hinduism. And this reading is a synopsis, not a translation. The background of this narrative is the rivalry between two groups. Arjuna is the most renowned warrior of the Pandavas, and as their leader, Arjuna is soon to be a victor, not only because he is the best warrior, but also because he has been given weapons by the gods Shiva and Indra, and he has never been defeated. Just before the battle starts, he asks his charioteer, Krishna, to take him where he can observe the battlefield and all that it contains. And when he looks out and sees those arrayed against him, he sees friends, relatives, former teachers. Contemplating the reality that he will be forced to see their demise and that this violence will cause harm to his soul, Arjuna loses heart and he drops his weapons to the ground. No matter who wins, he realizes the price of the battle is too great. Now, Krishna's aim is to change Arjuna's mind and convince him to fight and to perform his duty as a warrior. Krishna tells Arjuna that the key to liberation from bondage to action is not by refusing to act, but by performing one's actions with the proper understanding, attitude, and knowledge. He says that the ideal way to be in the world is to act without concern for the consequences of one's actions. When Arjuna asks how this kind of action is possible, Krishna replies that living a life of devotion to the divine is the path to liberation, that devotion results in selfless action.
To honor and to give time and attention to those things most important to us. We gather here for healing and for peace in our hearts and in the world, and honor our time together with the shared stories and news from the congregation. Each week there is a journal outside the entrance to the sanctuary where you can write a message of memory or of hope. Also, at any time during our service, you are welcome to come forward and light a candle here at the meditation center on the side of the chancel. Today, from our book of memory and hope, we include this entry. Another day, another mass shooting, another week, another incident of police violence. Has it always been this way, and we just never noticed? Interesting question. Let us also include in our circle of concern those beyond our immediate community. Let us open our minds and hearts to the place of quiet, to the silent prayer for the healing of pain, and the soft, gentle coming of love. Please now settle comfortably and pause for a few moments of quiet meditation to hold and uplift the sorrows and the celebrations, both spoken and unspoken among us. And then Misha will lift our hearts with music.
Journalist Dan Harris, an Emmy award-winning anchor and correspondent for ABC News, had a nationally televised panic attack. It was early in his career when he was especially eager to be known for his ambition and skill. He had rapidly climbed the reporter ladder, only to find that when he had almost reached the top, it culminated, as he says, in the single most humiliating moment of his life. He tells his story in a New York Times best-selling book entitled 10% Happier. In this book, he explains how in his frantic chasing after success and acclaim, he also let his mind run amok, urging him to ever greater achievements and accolades, until finally his inner drive became so much that his body forced him to reckon with the life he was creating. And that led to his full-on breakdown on national TV. For Dan Harris, his mind had become too fixated on outward success at the expense of feeding his soul. The result of such an unbalanced life is that it showed up in his body and for the world to see. There are other ways, too, of becoming unbalanced. In my case, for many years, I allowed my attention to be with the problems of religion. In some ways, this is not surprising, given that I am a scholar in the field of religion, and we are trained to analyze and dig up all that we can find that does go wrong. And I suppose this made me so much of a critic that I struggled to find much good or redeeming in organized religion. So for Dan and I both, the problem wasn't really our attention spans per se, it was the focus of them. In recent years, however, there has been considerable focus on the diminishing attention span. In 2015, for example, there was a study on our attention spans, and it concluded that we don't have much of one. That even goldfish outpaced us. Well, this information caused a huge splash, as you can imagine, and all sorts of hand-wringing until the story was debunked. But nevertheless, the study and those that do follow it point to an interesting question about our attention. Are we any good at it? How do we do it? And what is it that gets our attention? Have you ever succumbed to binge watching some television show? You know, watching episode after episode, drawn into the narrative, so connected to the story and the characters that you just can't stop? I see some of you nodding. Okay, so I'm not the only one. Good. I've done my fair bit. Mad Men, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. If you haven't done that, you should with that. It turns out that binge watching is actually fairly common for many. 2 years after that bogus story about the goldfish stat came out, there was another report released that said 73% of people had binge watched a show. And this meant that they had watched 5 hours of content in a single sitting. So what this information suggests, I think, is that we actually do pay attention. Researchers, since that false goldfish story of 2015, have identified that we employ different kinds of attention. We sometimes divide our attention, like driving while listening to a podcast or radio, hopefully not looking at our cell phones. That's divided attention. But there's also immersive attention. And this is where we go so deep into something that all else fades away. You've done this. Yes, whether it's working with art, maybe it's singing, maybe it's reading a book and getting lost in the narrative. That's the going deep, the immersive attention. Give us this kind of experience and we're all ears. A few years ago, after teaching in the field of religious studies, allowing my perspectives to be heavily influenced by skepticism and doubt, probably skewed too by the realities of sexism and other oppressive practices within all of the world's religions, I had cut myself off from any experientially focused aspect or consideration of religion. I was parched for meaningful experience and even unaware of how thirsty I had become. So there I was, one Sunday morning, not too different from this one. It was cold and overcast. And I was walking a labyrinth with a feminist ritual community that I'm a part of. And so we had gathered at Richland College to walk together. Bundled up in our coats and our scarves, we paced ourselves, walking around and around and back and forth. Those of you who've walked your labyrinth out here know what I'm talking about. And sometimes you're walking in sync, and then all of a sudden it appears that you're walking against each other in different directions. I don't remember too much particularly about that walk itself. But as a labyrinth, the design had become overgrown a bit. And I became lost, missed some turns. And at some point, I realized that I wasn't getting any closer to the middle. So I skipped a few rows so I could find my way there. After the walk was over, I stayed to talk with one of my friends who's a convener of this feminist group. We were working on a project together, and so we took the opportunity to talk about something or other related to our work. Now, this is one of those people, she's just spiritually in tune. You know what I'm talking about? She's there. I mean, she can tell you stories about things she hears and sees with regularity. She calls them mercy drops, and I've grown to like that phrase. For example, after her mother died and she was at her mother's house, it was a late fall day, and she was there cleaning things out. She looked out in the yard and everything was dead. From months of not being cared for, neglect, no rain. But there was one plant in the midst of all of those others that was blooming beautifully. And it was a brilliant red rose bush, the favorite bush and color for her mother. And its brilliant red stood as a testament to her mother's continuing care and presence in her life. So there I am on that Sunday morning, having jaywalked the labyrinth and feeling a bit frustrated. And I'm talking with my friend, and all of a sudden I start seeing these intermittent light flashes, flickers really, showing up on my friend's scarf. I was confused, and so I started looking at the material on her scarf to see if there might be threads there that were kind of causing this. Nope. So I looked up in the sky, an overcast sky like today, thinking, well, maybe the sun is breaking through, and that's what I'm seeing. No, it wasn't. So I looked behind us to the parking lot, thinking, well, maybe there's a car and they've got their lights on and that's somehow flashing. No cars, no lights, no blinking anywhere, but I kept seeing flash after flash showing up on her scarf. Finally, I blurted out, "Do you see it?" "See what?" she answered. I'm like, "The flickers of light. They keep landing on your scarf." "No, I don't see them. I don't see anything." Now, I'm not here to tell you that these flashes meant anything particular, or even that they were something other than the figment of my imagination. I can only tell you how they functioned for me. And that was that they opened me to the possibility of feeling awe and mystery, not unlike what I felt as your choir was singing this morning. Just being willing to consider that somewhere in this vast universe there is a love force that's more expansive than we can know, creates for us this magnetic pull that can soften our hearts and open our minds, especially to others. This light or energy or divine lover, whatever you want to name her, it enables us to embrace our truest selves, the one that feels connection to the world and to others, and especially to those hurting and in need. So when we left Arjuna, the mighty warrior, back there on that battlefield, he was distraught over the battle that he was supposed to lead. He had surveyed the landscape as far as the eye could see, and he saw his friends and his family and teachers and all kinds of people that he loved. And not wanting to kill them in battle, he dropped his weapons to the ground. The fortunate thing for Arjuna is that his charioteer, the one who brought him to the top of the mountain so that he could plainly see, was none other than Krishna, one of the most popular of all of the Hindu gods. Krishna is often seen as the great lover, the one who dances in the moonlight, full of grace and mercy and peace. Krishna does not only enable Arjuna to see what is before him, he shows him the path that all of us seek. That's the path of doing and being, knowing what to do, being who we are meant to be. Krishna shows Arjuna that we live our best lives when we live them with devotion to the divine. We could even say paying attention to divine mystery. And knowledge of ourselves, that is, learning to pay attention to who we really are. And finally, learning to be our most authentic selves. That is, living in this world with selfless action. So, attentiveness to divine mystery, attentiveness to our deepest selves, attentiveness to those around us. Now, understanding this battlefield of our lives takes deliberate action, just like Arjuna. We have to go there. We have to be willing to look out over the expanse of our lives and take an inventory of what we see. We often think that we can see our lives objectively without help. We don't really need someone to go around poking around, asking us difficult questions. But Arjuna's story shows us that he needed his charioteer. And I think we're not all that different, that we too need people to help us see. The fortunate thing is our sources are unlimited. We have friends and families and guides we read or listen to, wisdom from sustained reflection on our lives. In other words, there's help from every corner, as long as we pay attention. In the year 2000, Robert Redford produced a film entitled The Legend of Bagger Vance. Do you know it? Great. It starred Will Smith, as you know, and Matt Damon, and was ostensibly about golf. Now, I hesitated this week about whether or not to show a clip. Given Will Smith's recent and unfortunate public moment of coming undone. But I decided not to let that one moment overshadow what I think is one of the most helpful films on religion. Now, what most people didn't know in the year 2000, or maybe even today, is that at the core, this film is not about golf. This film is a modern telling of the Gita. And so I want to use it today as a conclusion, but more importantly, as an invitation to explore this question for ourselves. When we look out over the expanses of our lives, what do we see? What is in your field? I've told you some of mine. I'd love to hear some of yours.
Oh, yes. Greatest game there is. Right, Hardy?
Yes, sir.
The greatest game there will ever be.
Just you and the ball.
All by your lonesome.
Hey.
I think it's time.
Time for what?
Time for you to see the field.
The field? I see the field, but it's 445 yards long. It's got a little red flag at the end of it. It's 12 strokes ahead of me. Come on.
That ain't it. Because if you was seeing the field, you wouldn't be hacking at that ball like you was chopping weeds out from under your front porch.
Just give me the club.
Sorry I brought it up. Here, you gonna take that hack away.
All right, what's the field?
Fix your eyes on Bobby Jones.
He's a piece of work here right now.
Well, give the man room. Man room. Knock it out there, Bobby.
Look at his practice swing. Almost like it's searching for something. Then he finds it. Watch how he settle himself right into the middle of it. Feel that focus. And he got a lot of shots he could choose from. Duffs and tops and skulls. But there's only one shot that's in perfect harmony with the field. One shot that's his. Authentic shot. And that shot is going to choose him. There's a perfect shot out there trying to find each and every one of us. All we got to do is get ourselves out of its way. Let it choose us. Look at him. He in the field. You can't see that flag as some dragon you got to slay. You have to look with soft eyes. See the place where the tides and the seasons and the turning of the earth all come together. Where everything that is becomes one. You got to seek that place with your soul, Junior. seek it with your hands. Don't think about it. Feel it. Your hands is wiser than your head ever gonna be. I can't take you there, Juna. Just hopes I can help you find a way.
Our closing hymn this morning is number 20, Be Thou My Vision.
Never has it been more true than now. We extinguish this flame, but the sparks within us remain alight. From each of us in our supposed solitude, the signals buzz and hum, sparking through space to one another, connecting us invisibly but palpably. We are one, and from every window our light shines.
In Hinduism, there is the idea that we are more connected than we know. And it's in our telling and hearing of stories that we come to recognize that more clearly. So as we go forth today, let's listen and tell our stories. Amen.
For coffee and conversation in the library after service.